Oh,
All right.
here we go. We're starting to get people trickle in. This is great. All right. Thank you for joining us this morning. Welcome to Building Pragmatic User Personas with Annika Dunaway. I'm going to step out of the way, but I will say very quickly, we have that chat box. Please use it as we're rolling through the presentation. If there are any questions, and any questions you pose will be put on the screen for Annika to answer. So please use that chat box. And then Annika, please take it away, introduce yourself. And again, thank you for hosting this today.
All right. Thank you, Jim. Welcome, everybody, to our second AMP webinar, Building Pragmatic User Personas. My name is Annika. I'm a product manager at AMP, and I have come with more than 10 years of experience as a CRM manager, so shifted careers, worked also as a senior growth consultant with brands like Delivery Hero, Omio, which was Go Euro, Kaya Health, and many more. As well as working as a senior growth consultant for Feature Mobile Growth Consultancy in Berlin. Fun fact about me, I love surfing, but unfortunately I get seasick when being on a surfboard. So it's a little unfortunate sometimes to then be on the ocean and feel like that. Well, something that I wanted to share. So I'm very glad you joined me today. We will right away jump into what are value-based personas before I actually show you the process of how we do this at AMP with our customers and figure out live on a Fig Jam how we do this. So what are value-based personas? Value-based personas are detailed representations of our customers focusing on their core values and beliefs. So instead of focusing on demographics like the age or any other kind of job, does someone have a family, is someone a student, we don't want to focus on that. We want to go way more into details and want to understand what are our customers' values and beliefs, what do they really care about. And why we do this is because when we delve into the psychology behind common values, we find that shared values significantly enhance connections among people. So we know that people who have shared values connect easily with each other, engage easily with each other, and foster quicker trust building. And so this principle is equally applicable to the relationship between companies and their customers or their users, like app and your users. When a company aligns its values with the customer's value and effectively communicates these, we can see an increase in engagement, and it fosters also trust of the customer towards your brand and your app. And so it matters a lot to foster these strong emotional bonds and actually create these bonds of feeling like part of a community, because people naturally gravitate towards communities that reflect their values and then create a sense of belonging. And that's what you want to do with your brand as well. So let's go into a quick example here. This is Emma. Emma is 40 years old, VP Marketing, eco-conscious consumer. So the top one, what I just said, is mainly focused on demographics, on a very traditional way of looking at a persona or building a persona. But her core values, which she really believes in, is sustainability, ethical consumption, environmental protection. So she prefers products that are made of sustainable materials, looks for brands that practice ethical manufacturing, engages with content related to environmental activism. So once you know this and you know her values are these, as a company, what you want to do is, what are my company values? How can I add my values into my messaging and actually use this information that I have about every single user's value to use in my communication strategies to foster that bond that we talked about. It's like you want to, for only her case, you want to highlight the use of organic and recycled materials, for example, or share stories about ethical manufacturing processes. So only for her, you want to communicate this. As a result, Emma would feel strongly like a strong emotional connection towards your brand because it aligns with her personal values. So users come with a lot of different values and beliefs to your app, and obviously also with different intentions and expectations of problems your app is supposed to solve for them. And we want to find out not only what are the problems, but also what are the core values behind this. But before we do that, going to look a little bit into the evolution of the segmentation and user personas. And no worries, it's not a history lesson, so I'll not go crazy over this. I just wanted to highlight here that early in the in 1960s, 1980s, there were already bigger companies looking into identifying distinct groups within a market to tailor the products and marketing efforts. And then in the late 1990s, we have the rise of database marketing. So that is also the start of CRM systems, different than we know them today, because a lot since then has evolved. And a lot has evolved around data. And all of you know that, most likely, because we are usually product persons, digital marketers. And so the digital marketing and web analytics, for example, or the big data has transformed how we build segments and how we actually look at our users, because we get more and more data that we can use to identify what our users want. Oh, sorry. To then develop the segments and audiences that we want. What this still does is that we only focus on groups of people. We're only focusing on, I don't know, a part of like a big segment of our users that recently purchased, that liked a specific product or category, and they would always get the same message about this thing that they have bought maybe, or that they bought in the past, but not really. We don't really encourage a discovery process about what else is here on this app, what else could you do? Because often we are missing the data to do this, or the predictive analytics to do this. But then 2 years ago, GPT came in, and today is not about GPT because I think we hear a lot about this. But there were a lot of advancements in AI and predictive analytics that have further refined segmentation techniques, and leading companies have adopted this already. So if you look at big apps, big markets like Netflix, Spotify, for example, if all of you, if we would be in a room and I would ask you to open your phone and open Spotify, whoever uses it, or Netflix, everyone's experience will be different. Everyone's recommendations will be different. And so this is something that we want everyone to be able to experience and to actually adopt. So it makes it easier for marketers to anticipate customer needs and preferences with greater accuracy, and enables us to still learn from our customers and personalize, even though data privacy has become very, very important. And data privacy is a topic ongoing for a while. Since we started collecting so much data, it became a bigger and bigger topic. But with the help of machine learning and AI, we can actually collect a lot of behavioral data without really tying it to an email address, because we don't need that. We don't need the name or the email address to identify behavioral patterns on an app. Before I go forward, though, Jim mentioned it before. If you have any questions, there is a question functionality. Please drop them in. We can answer them on the fly or afterwards. Don't be shy. Anything goes. Yeah, feel free to do that. So when we apply user personas, as I just mentioned, we don't only do that in messages and communication. That is a very easy way for us, because especially as CRM or product managers, this is what we have a simple hand in with our CRM tools that we have. So we create messages and send them out to users. But we can also use the information and the user values to tailor our product to meet these specific needs of the persona. and also prioritizing features based on the persona values or user insights that we have. So we have a few common pitfalls in persona building. And often when we do the traditional approach of demographic segmentation, many persona building efforts result in personas that are very broad and vague, that don't cover anything. And if we go back to the idea of Emma, if you talk to Emma, who's 40 years old, who is a VP of marketing, and you talk to Carla, who's also 40 years old and a VP of marketing, their interest and their idea about what your app solves will be most likely completely different. While one is eco-conscious, the other one is interested in something completely else. They have the same job, they have the same age, but that doesn't mean they come with the same intention to your app. And so what we want to do is we don't want to look into the segments anymore, but focus on every single customer. And now that sounds very big and like a lot of work, but we'll go into how we do this in a second. So we don't want to focus on demographics because it doesn't describe personalities or values. And then we have a lack of actionable insights, like usually personas that we just mentioned don't provide us with any actionable insights into the motivations or really the pain points that that limits our business to grow, that limits value to the business. And then disconnect from user behavior. So when our personas are not based on real customer data and behavior, then they become very disconnected from the actual needs and preferences of our target audience or target user in this case, because it will not be only one audience. So now, before I go into this, I would like us to quickly drop a poll in. And Jim, if you could do that for me, that would be great, because I would like to understand how many people in this webinar have built personas before or have them actively in their company and use them or don't use them at all. So if you could quickly just, and that's also seeing if you're still paying attention, if you could quickly answer that, that would be amazing. I'll wait for a few seconds. All right. There's some more people clicking, but the tendency is going to, I have personas, but I don't use them. And I really appreciate the honesty here. But also I haven't built or used personas. So that's very interesting. So in my experience or from the past, I have worked in certain companies where we had user personas, but we never really, it was like kind of a brand persona and we knew about it, but we never really did anything with them because we didn't know how. How to use these insights, not even for building high level segments, really.
So Annika, just so you know, I shared the results up. So it looks like a quarter haven't built. It looked like the votes were good. A quarter haven't built, and almost half have personas but don't use them. I'm surprised. So nobody responded that they actually use personas, which I think is pretty reflective of what we see as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's very interesting, and thank you for clicking here and answering. Thank you, Jim, for hopping in. So when I look at basic facts, or when we look them up, we see that 44% of B2B marketers currently use personas in their strategy. So in our little poll, it's a little less. But 71% of companies say that they exceed their revenue have documented personas. So now these personas are very demographic heavy because value-based is not something that everyone does. And so imagine what we could do if we have value-based personas. And at AMP, we can see with our customers that we had an increase in conversion rate and engagement by using value-based communication with our customers. So before we jump into the FigJam, and I will show you some insights on a real life example, quick points on this. We're going to start with the why. So effective persona building begins with the understanding of customer motivations, values, and really identifying their pain points. So now people will think, oh man, we have to build surveys to understand pain points of our customers. Well, you can do that. But from my experience, survey data usually ends up rotting somewhere in an Excel sheet that no one really likes to look at anymore after the brilliant idea of sending it out. So usually there's a lot of data already to use. Simple sources can give you many insights, and you will see in a bit what I mean, because you can only look at your App Store and Play Store reviews, and you will see what your customers actually care about. And then obviously, you will see that you could try building what we're going to do now, but you will most likely need AI and machine learning to bring it to an extent where you can really have this ready for all, like every single user that your app has. So we want to really end up building and personalizing the experience for every single user, not only for a segment.
We did get a quick question, so I just popped that up from Samir. So would you say having segmentation based on user persona will have more impact than other more generic personalization aspects, such as country of origin, language, etc.? I'm sure you're going to answer it, but I think there's some good nuance there. So I'm going to put this up, and then we can go back to your presentation after you answer it.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. And hi, Samir. I'm glad you're here. I haven't seen you in a while, so we should chat. So I would say this goes hand in hand. Obviously, you still need to personalize language, because if you send a value that is in Spanish to someone who actually only speaks English, well, then you obviously fail. So it goes hand in hand. You still want to go country, language, all the high level ones that you build these audiences. But within these audiences, you want to make sure that you have several options to address the value of the user, what they care about, and also communicate your brand value to the right people. Does that make sense, or do you have a follow-up question? It's a little tough. We should have a chat, because now you can't really say anything. But drop another follow-up question if you have one. So now I would like to swap to our actual persona building and how we approach this with our customers. Oh, you're welcome, Samir. All right, so when we have a customer joining, I spend a lot of time with them really thinking about what does your company do? What are your users? What problem are you solving? And so what we see, for a real life example, I brought the Strava app. Some people might work out here, so they can relate to this one. And if we are an app like Strava, and we want our customers to finish a profile, and everyone here who works in app marketing knows that user activation is one of our biggest problems. Customers have a lot of choice in terms of apps, app categories. They come, they try. If they don't like it right away, they usually uninstall. Right. So you want to make sure they actually like it, they feel addressed, and you address their needs and values right away. What usually notifications look like is this. Very generic. By the way, this is not an original one. So sorry, Strava, I made this up. It's not an original one from Strava. Hi, athlete, you haven't finished your profile yet. Let's finish now. Now we can think about, well, maybe it brings people back to finish their profile. It just works a reminder. But what happens is here, that there is no reason for me to go back. I mean, what is the reason for me to finish this profile? Do I get anything from it? Am I missing out on something? We don't know. So where we want to end up is different experiences. In this one, we say an amazing community is waiting for people who focus on becoming part of a community. So by finishing your profile, let's say you get access to a leaderboard or the community itself. Other people mainly care about becoming a better version of themselves. So you want to address this, and you say, well, let's start this journey together by finishing your profile and become this better version of yourself. Obviously, you have to build this for every value, and that's where AMP comes in. But let's look at this. A few minutes ago, I said a very good source to understand what your users really care about is the App Store ratings or Google Play Store ratings. That's what I did here and what we usually do with our customers. We take these, we either read through, or you can also just take the screenshots, drop them in GPT, and see what comes out of there. You can ask for these things. That works pretty decently. So we know that Grace cares about convenience and self-improvement. Chad is all about convenience and efficiency. And Joelle is about accuracy of tracking, self-improvement. Self-improvement is actually one that came up quite a lot. So this is one of the reasons why people use Strava. And we're going to collect why do people use this app? What is really important to them with this, with other sources like social interaction, competition, convenience we saw. There's also some with achievements. They want easy tracking. So all of those, whatever we can think about in this session, we put in here. And then we also find out what are the brand or company values. So, and in Strava's, in this example, it is user empowerment or accuracy and reliability, community engagement. So community speaks a lot to people who like the challenges, who love the Strava community. So if this, we can connect this and we can communicate this to our customers in our messages, and we want to use it in our messages. So how we do this is once we have identified the values and the alignment with the customer values, we can transform this information into effective messages. And we have now two approaches because we also create labels, and I will explain in a bit how that works or why we do this. But for some people, it's easier to think about a message first, because if you're a CRM person, you tend to write a message for a certain, like to get a certain action or to inform someone about something. And usually it's very generic because we want it to cater to a big segment of people. And then we can transform parts of the message into components. And we will go that route today because it's a little simpler, at least for some people. So I just don't want to say for everyone, but I hope that works today. So let's quickly go about what are components. So at AMP, we use components to create dynamic and personalized messages for our users. So we take our message and split it into smaller chunks, smaller parts. There are some pre-made components like value propositions, greetings, offerings. I hope this is very much readable. It looks kind of like this. And those are elements of your message. So we mark the text, we use it as a component. So every component now, once we have a part of our text, can have a lot of variants. So it's kind of, you can imagine it as kind of an interchangeable piece of text that works for different people. When we go back onto the top, we had our social interaction, competition, convenience, achievement, self-improvement. So if we now look into our value propositions for these different values, we can create a little text for our component. So was there, no, okay, something was moving. Was there another question? I think Jim will let me know if there was. All right, so we just look at this part, a value proposition. So what is important? We have people who care about community. So we want to talk about community, become part of an amazing community, or self-improvement. Unlock your full potential, become the best version of yourself. So we address different values with a sentence or two. That depends on how long our message will be. Every app also comes with offerings, obviously. It's either features, it can be products, it can be product categories. In this case, you see that we have performance analyses, for example, as an offering that we have identified with the customer. So we have segment leaderboards, personal bests, in-depth performance and progress tracking, or workout analyses and feedback. All of these speak about a high-level label of performance analyses. So those we call alternates for this label. And we go into labels. I would say we can swap over to labels now and then come back to our value propositions, because what we want in the end is our use case, finish your profile that we started with on the top. We want multiple parts of these messages come together in the tool, humanly readable, but also sorted by labels. So we will go into labels so I can explain you how that works. So how do we use labels? We are again at Netflix and Spotify because they are very, very good with their labels, and they even have what they call it tags. And they actually have people who are doing a full-time job in tagging content, like really watch and tag content. So if you're looking for a new job, maybe that's something interesting to consider. So labels are descriptive tags applied to our message variants that I just showed. The labels help our agents, and so we talk about AI agents that you can imagine as like an extension to your CRM team who will help you cluster data, build smaller user segments, understand everyone's users' preferences. So every user has one agent assigned to them, and they will understand what does this user like, what time, what channel, what day, what frequency, what content they like. But for them to understand what is our content about, we need to use labels. And our labels usually then describe what we talk about. Like when we go back here to the sentence of unlock your full potential, it talks about what is self-improvement. Same with become the best version of yourself, also speaks about self-improvement. So we use these labels then to educate our agents. We can have as many labels as we want. And the labels should always help us to learn about our users, to actually answer questions, to what is important for my customers, or what type of content do they like, or are they more like a marathon runner, or I don't know, someone who likes an ultra marathon. There are different questions we can ask ourselves and answer with the labels. What is cool about this is very cool is that there's us defining the strategy and the framework and the instructions for the agents while they figure out for every single user what works best. So you can still take away this piece of really looking into understanding your customer and your user, and you could build high-level segments with this information, right? You could still say, oh, I'll take this, thank you, Annika, I'll build a segment for and talk about self-improvement, and then another segment for people who might like convenience, and I will just see and test what works. That's possible. It will be a lot of work for a human being, but it will also not work accurately because our agents do consistent work. As like 24/7 work, they don't get sleep. So they will understand that this week someone really cares about convenience, but that could shift next week. And they also know, oh, Annika likes her notifications in the mornings at 8 a.m. because that's when she will read our messages or has time to deal with this. Why someone else, or maybe next week, I like it rather at 9 p.m. because I didn't have time in the mornings. So we learn, we understand customer behavior. Well, not me, but the agents understand customer behavior and then adjust over time. And so we see in our data that labels fluctuate. You can see a lot of movement between what is important right now that takes also into consideration seasonality and other things from outside. And then sometimes convenience works very well for a user, but then next week it is a different for the user. So once we have trained our agents or maybe another thing for the people who are a little younger than me, you can also think about labels or the tags as hashtags, like on Instagram and TikTok, where it gives you a lot of information about what this post is actually about. So we can do the same here. Then we do this with the customer's app. But our ultimate goal is to have our value proposition labels with a lot of alternates and the same offerings. And offerings and CTAs are very simple. Value propositions take a little longer to figure out. We bring them into the tool to then, in the end, have a list of messages. So our first message, we can add a greeting for everyone. We can have a very generic one. We can have one with personalization. We can have anything that we really like as a greeting. And what will happen now is, instead of us saying, I want this message to be sent to all of these users, this will be a set that the agents will look at and say, oh, the one that was focusing on self-improvement, I have a user who loves self-improvement. I will pick this together with this and CTA. We'll put it together. We'll send it to that user. So this is our main way of working and figuring out value propositions. Are there any other questions on this? Okay, I see Ayomi, thank you. Hi, Annika, have you tried A/B testing for user personas? How has your experience been in targeting with user personas? Okay, so that's a tough question. Well, it's not tough, but it's tougher to explain because we don't work with the traditional A/B testing. So when we look at AMP at the platform itself, we look at really user-based personalization. So we don't do an A/B split run and then see, oh, this performed better than the other. We send everything to this. A very, very big pitfall of this is actually that if you do this, by the time you implement the result of your A/B test, how do you know it's still relevant, right? I mean, from execution to running it to evaluating it, how do you know it's still valuable? It's like mostly not, and then it's still for one segment or two segments. But what we do is continuously, if you want to call it testing, but we are learning, continuously learning what does every single customer like in terms of content, timing, channel, and adjust it. This is not humans doing this work anymore. It's like us saying, this is my content strategy. This is what I want to talk about. And then you give this work to the agents and let it run, and they will consistently adjust. So there's no traditional A/B test in any way. It's if you want to read more about this or see more about this, it's called reinforcement learning. And we have data scientists, and was founded by data scientists, who have wrote a lot of blog posts on this if you're interested in reading the technicalities behind it. No worries, you're welcome. Jim, I see you popping up there.
Yeah, no, sorry. I just wanted to, I thought this was really good. One of our data scientists, for example, brought up with A/B tests, you are always playing for not the majority, but your largest minority. So you're getting the largest group of users that respond positively. For me, it's always, if the least performing segment or option still works for some people, why would we want to exclude those people? So, if we do an A/B test and one result gets a CTR of 5% and another one gets a CTR of 2%, is the 2% really bad, or did that appeal to 2% of users? So it's more
true.
complex than it would lend itself to believe.
Very true. So I'm through with this part, and I will be very happy to extend. Like, obviously, I don't want to waste anyone's time here. So if anyone has more questions, please feel free to ask all these questions. I hope it was informative. I'm also happy to dive deeper into anything if anyone has. I see another question. I'll just pull this up here too, so I can read it. That's a good question. So when we do reinforcement learning, so when we use machine learning, what is happening in the background is a scoring system. Not only, but it takes a lot of information from the user behavior. So we know we plug into a database, anything where all the data of the user behavior is stored, and take the event stream data. So we know how users behave over time, what they're doing, when they're doing it, again, without any data privacy violations. So what now happens is that our agents pick a random combination first. If we don't know the user yet, we take a random combination, we send it, we see if there's a positive reaction or a negative reaction to this message in terms of clicks. And then we learn from it, like, oh, this label works well, the other one doesn't. That doesn't mean that everyone gets tons of messages because we have to learn. That is not the case. I want to cover that here quickly too. Because we learn a lot about the frequency as well, and we are trying here and there, but it's not like we send 1 million messages to everyone and then see what they like best, because also these interests change over time. So we take all this data that we have about the user behavior on this app, cluster them into smaller groups, which is called hierarchical clustering. Not really good with the data science and parts here to explain. And we then learn about what the user preference is. So I will come to that question in a second. So one of the founders, Sean, has actually did a webinar, I think 3 weeks ago. We can share that again, or maybe, I don't know, Jim, can you share this here in the chat or something, where people can go back in, maybe like this little button feature or something, where people can go and rewatch that. Thank you, because that explains very well how we do things and why we do them this way. I hope that covers that question more or less, Valeria. Okay, I'm glad. Okay, so Christian, hi, haven't seen you in a while. So your question is, do we as marketers get any point after all optimizations at MBA, some kind of classical user persona that we could later share with other teams? So what you get is not a user persona per se, but what you get is all the data that we generate. And so AMP is generating a full list of all the labels, what works, what doesn't work, optimizing your funnel. So when we start working with customers, we work with them on what are the goals. We set up the funnel for them. For a Strava app, it might be workout completed as like a goal, subscription started, or trial started. So you have different goals that you set, and the agents will optimize for these goals. So what you get is all the output of this, of like what they're doing as work, like timing, what does each user care about, and this data is all yours. So you can take it back to the other teams, you can export it, you can use it to personalize on your product. So if you know user XYZ likes convenience and affordability, it goes back into your app if you wanted to for that particular user. So you can do on-screen optimizations just using all the data that we generate while learning from your users. Does that answer your question? I'm also happy to show you around at some point if you want to, Christian.
Yeah, I was actually, I got a message that would it be helpful, and I don't want to put you on the spot if you're not prepared, but to show an example of how a message is constructed with labels. And while you're pulling that up, if you'd like, I can kind of address. Valerie, I thought your question was very good. And there was one point that I thought I could address if Annika's pulling that up. Is it okay, Annika? I want to put you on the
spot. Yeah, absolutely. I'm just not sure if I'm still sharing my screen or not.
I think the question screen is up, so you should be all right.
Okay.
Something interesting here that I learned from the data scientists on what messages to send. A lot of this comes down to a control group. So typically when we construct a control group, we pick a statistically significantly sizable group of users and hold them as a control group. And then we experiment on the other groups. This is also really limiting because you can only test a few things at once. So when Annika's talking about this large amount of messages in a library, that's overwhelming. And I understand that. What we do is a version of coarse and exact matching, which we have blogs on that as well, but it's basically user by user matching. So when you absorb all of your event stream and all of a user's behavior, you can more easily find very similar users by the way that they act. They view certain things, they come in at certain times, they look at certain products, and that allows us to do more testing because we can test one user and use another user that is incredibly similar as control. So if you see two people who visit every Thursday evening and now I want to test a Tuesday morning slot, I can test on this one-to-one and learn that way. So this allows me to test a lot more messages at once. So we use, like Annika mentioned, those different combinations of messages. But when you do it, you're doing on that very tight one-to-one control. Also, just side note, because it was mentioned to me, a lot of people who've used the system feel like it's safer than using a larger system that blasts more large-scale messages to large segments. Because if there is I'll say a misstep, but a message that just doesn't hit right, you're only ever messaging a small handful of select users intentionally at any given time, as opposed to like messaging a broad swath where, if something were to be messed up, a message would go to a large group at one time instead of just a one-off. So I hope that's helpful too. Annika, are you ready?
1 second. Sorry, you were talking so much and now I got stuck on my one screen here. Give me 1 second.
Oh, you're fine.
Just go into the demo.
And I did put, just so everyone can see it, and I can make sure that it goes out in our follow-up as well, a link to our talk at MAU where we covered agents and how they make decisions. And then we have our deep dive, which was led by our chief data scientist, which I will include as well.
Thank you, Jim.
Yep.
Appreciate. Okay, yeah, I'm ready. I can show the label.
Oh, there you go. Perfect. You're sharing your screen. Good to go.
Yeah, nice. So coming back to the label data, Christian, that you asked for too, is so the data we generate, as you can see here, we have call to actions. Those are our components, and on the bottom here we see our labels, and here we see the labels too. What this tells us is that, for example, the call to action that is labeled as encouraging works very well because everything that is in the top right quadrant, that's where we want our content to be at some point, is sent very often. That means it's currently very engaging for customers. And so it's on the top right. The agents have identified this is it for many customers. If it's on the bottom left here, we know, oh, this doesn't work very well. But what we could try is add more content, newer content, fresher content to make it move more into the right direction. So in terms of I said earlier, we set up a funnel. So every funnel looks different for our customers and what we optimize for in the end. So in this case, we say this is revenue successful. It's just a demo account. Add to cart successful. And we can look per label, in this case, encouraging, label as encouraging, call to action. What was the click rate? What's the general engagement? And general engagement means everything else that is not part of add to cart or a revenue event, because we really look at all the behavioral, all the event stream data to understand user behavior. So we put everything in here. And then we have the add to cart success and the revenue success. And you can see here, that's one of the interesting things to see how the CTR dynamic changes for this label. And you can see it for all the labels, that it's constantly on the move because things change for customers, preferences change, interests change. Outside of the product, many things change. And so the agents are able to adjust to these preferences and learn about what the user actually likes to interact with.
So I think and say, instead of looking at a message and saying this campaign or this specific message did really well, we're looking and saying things like, hey, during COVID times, messages about safety and security, like across all messages. So like SMS messages about safety and security, email bits that talk about safety and security, push that talks about, like, just as a theme, a broader theme, safety and security and convenience maybe are higher with COVID. But then post-COVID, now we're back in the world and interacting, like convenience might stay high, but some other thing, some exploration or something maybe high, and safety might be like a lower concern. Like, is that essentially what you're showing?
Yeah, that's right. So that is the data that you will get back if you wanted to, Christian. So that is data that you can then pipe into your database that you can use on your product as well, or with other teams, of course, like whoever is interested in that. For everyone, thank you so much for being here, for listening to me. And please let me know if you want to follow up. I'm always happy to jump on a call, go through things, specific questions you might have. How does it look for your brand, for your app? Can we do this together? We surely can. So thanks a lot.